Music News Review Show. Welcome to the Books, Music, and News Review Show. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties here in that the disclaimer wouldn't come on. And since I'm the only one who is scheduled in here to do this at this time, and the disclaimer is nowhere to be found, I will tell you the disclaimer verbally. So the opinions and views expressed on this program do not reflect those of the staff or management of Community Access Television, of Staten Island Community Television. The opinions and views expressed on this program do not reflect on the views of Staten Island Community Television. So, it's a new year. It's very good for me now to begin a new year. I have two books I'd like to tell you about. And, I didn't get the close-up camera, but I might bring it to the camera to show you. So the first book is a very interesting book in that, in my mind, I wrote this book many, many years ago, decades ago. Decades. Now, technically, I did not write this book. Somebody else wrote this book. But what I mean when I say I wrote this book is I am an author, I'm a writer, and a lot of my books, before they get to actually go into publishing, someone else publishes them. It's their own idea and their own concept and their own research. And then I pick up the book in the store and I'm like, wow, that's how I lived my life. That's how it began my life. That's what I used to get through a lot of tough times. This is how a book of how I survived, even though it's not a book of survival, which is kind of interesting. And what it is a book of concepts and steps and, actions or thoughts or patterns that you can use to change your life. It actually had a big sticker on the front, or a cover, a paper cover, and it said, "This book will save your life." Oh, no, this book will change your life. This book will change your life. And it definitely can, and definitely will. Because I know people who are in my same situation that did not use these concepts and thoughts, and they had a way different life. Even though they started out the same, it was way different. So I'm going to bring this to the camera to show you the name of the book. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about this book, which is really fabulous. So I'm going to bring it to the camera. Wait there, don't go anywhere. So the name of the book is, there you go. That way? That way. The book is called, actually, I'll have to get the title. There's a few titles on the cover. I'll have to get it straight from the title page to make sure I read it right. The book is called Tiny Habits, The Small Changes That Change Everything. It's called The Tiny Habits, The Small Changes That Change Everything. And it's by somebody I never heard of named B.J. Fogg. B as in book. J as in Jesus. Fogg as in the fog's rolling in with a double G. And this guy had a PhD. No wonder it's so good. Look at that. When I was a kid and when I was learning to write and putting the books together in my head, I had the mind of a PhD, according to this book. Because all the ideas in here and the concepts in here are what I used. The only thing is I didn't put the charts in. I didn't have charts and graphics like that. But there are lists and there are things to do. And basically it's, on the front cover it says the tiny, small change habits that change everything. Now I'm going to give you an example of how I used these ideas when I didn't even read this book. I had the information beforehand. And it's tiny, small, change habits that change everything. One of the examples that I can give you is when I was going to really get into photography and really begin. I had my goals and I had things that I had planned to do. And if you see me squinting, it's these lights are so terrible. They're so bright. No sunglasses today. So when I was beginning to get into it, I took tiny steps. I changed tiny behaviors. I was a no-name photographer, didn't have any experience, didn't even have a camera, like a little point-and-shoot camera. And then eventually I got a bigger camera. But I hadn't done any exhibits or anything like that. And I decided to make tiny changes and just do tiny things, just do one thing at a time. And then I'll read you some things from the book because he has a way better way of saying it than I do. I can give you the life examples and I can show you how they worked. But he can give it to you on paper with the graphs and all. So I'm going to read a little bit from the book, Tiny Habits, Small Changes That Change Everything. I'll read you the table of contents first, which is there in blue or teal, or, call it whatever you like. He begins, the long story, talking about the elements of behavior, about motivation and focus. And I totally disagree with some of the things in the book, but that's all right. I have my own copy, and I made all my notes in there, the things that I agree work for me or the things that I don't agree don't work for me. And you get your book and you do that too. So, and it goes on to ability. Easy does it. Chapter 4 is prompts, the power of after. Then there's 5, emotions create habits. You ever experienced that? Yeah, emotions create habits. Growing your habits from tiny to transformative. And untangling bad habits. I have a bad habit of speaking very fast, so we're going to make a tiny change right now, and I'm going to slow down, and you will see how tiny changes can really change everything. Notice that? I slowed down. I made a tiny change, and that's going to change everything. Oops, I forget. Sometimes I speed up without thinking about it. Then we've got untangling bad habits, a systematic solution, and how we change together. And then there's the conclusion, the small changes that change everything. That's the table of contents in the book. There is no index in the book, but there's something better than an index, which is kind of interesting. The back is wonderful. After page 286, okay, it's the appendixes. Appendixes? Did I say that right? It's all the little charts and the graphics, and then there's a list, which is kind of cool. 32 ways to frame success. And there's 2 pages of that. Then there is a 100 ways to celebrate and feel shine. That's about 3 pages. And then there's 300 recipes of tiny habits and challenges. Then there's tiny habits for better sleep. Then there's tiny habits for active older adults. Then there's tiny habits for caregivers and tiny habits for new managers. We go on to find tiny habits for success in college and tiny habits for dads who work from home. Tiny habits for reducing stress. And if you just tuned in, this is the Books, Music, and News Review Show, talking about a book. Tiny habits that change everything. There's tiny habits for work teams. I can give you a few of those off the top of my head. There's tiny habits for being more productive. Tiny habits for brain health. A lot of people need that, huh? Then there's tiny habits for strengthening close relationships. And tiny habits for staying focused. Now, these are just all suggestions and ideas, but these are to give you ideas of where to begin and how to start on your tiny habits. There's tiny habits for stopping habits. You need to read that. I didn't read that one yet. Then there's tiny habits for business travel. And then there's maxims in behavior and design. And then there's all about the author, which I'm going to tell you about the author. B.J. Fogg founded the Behavior Design Lab in Stanford University in addition to his research. Fogg teaches industry innovators how human behavior really works. He created the Tiny Habits Academy to help people. I'm going to make a small change now and walk over to get a drink of something. Stay there. Don't go anywhere. Okay. Oh, I'm not off screen. I'm just getting a drink. For medicinal reasons. What that does for me is that stops a little asthma attack or something. If I get a tickle or I start coughing, I make a tiny change, take a little drink of something sweet, and then I'm good to go. So now back to the book. Tiny Habits. It's one of those books I will call a reference book, which I'm keeping. Tiny is mighty. Yeah, tiny is mighty. So one of the things that I disagree with in the book is, I will tell you that. There's a page in here where he talks about motivation. I guess I should read it directly because I won't give you the right idea. Let's see if I could find it. Oh, I put that right on the front cover. Hold on. Oh, no, I didn't. That's a tiny habit I'm going to have to change. I'm really going to work with this book. It's going to make tremendous changes in my life. And the first thing I might do is not read from the book. No, okay. Here you go. I'll read this. Tiny exercises to practice the Fogg behavior model. Now, this is just one page in the book. The book is excellent. The first exercise is easy. Now, why did he make the first exercise easy? Because, you know, tiny changes change everything. The second exercise will take a little more time and work, but don't skip it. I guarantee your investment of time and effort will pay off. I'm going to read from the book, and when I'm stopping the reading, I will let you know that the following is just my opinion. So here, I'll read from the book. Exercise 1 is tiny exercise. Explore ways to stop a habit. So if you want to stop a bad habit, or maybe it's a good habit, you want to stop it anyway. The Fogg behavior model applies to all types of behavior change. In this exercise, you'll explore some simple ways to stop a habit. Write down 3 habits that you would like to stop. Try to be specific. For example, write, stop buying soda for lunch rather than stop drinking soda. See, there you go. See, tiny habits change things. It doesn't have to be a big thing. You don't have to stop buying soda. Just stop buying soda for lunch. And that can change everything. Oh, that was my opinion. Go back to reading. For each habit, think of ways you might remove or avoid the prompt. If you can't think of anything, that's okay. Move on to the next step. For each habit, think of ways to make it harder to do. Ability. For each habit, think of ways to reduce your motivation. And step 5 is for each habit, select your best solution from the steps 2, 3, and 4. And for extra credit, put your solution into practice. So there you go. That's just one page in tiny small changes that change, tiny habits that change everything. Now, what's next? So here, this is the part I don't agree with, because I guess whenever you read a book, you have to take what's good for you and leave what's not good for you. So this part of the book I disagree with, but later on he explains it in a different way, and I could agree with some of that. But he actually writes in big, bold letters, in big blue letters, motivation is unreliable. I disagree with that. For me, motivation sometimes is everything. But I'll give you an example from what he's writing here. Motivation is often unreliable when it comes to home improvement, and is also unreliable with diets and exercise routines and creative projects and filing taxes, opening businesses, and searching for jobs. The motivation monkey's traps are stealthy and numerous. They catch you whether you're facing a big project or attempting to change your habits. So here's the unfortunate thing, he says. Most people believe motivation is a true engine of behavior change. Words like rewards and incentives get thrown around with such regularity that most people think you can create whatever habits you want if you find the right carrot to dangle in front of yourself. This kind of thinking is understandable, but it always happens to be wrong. It also happens to be wrong. Yes, motivation is one of the three elements that drives behavior. The problem is that motivation is often fickle. And this chapter digs deeper into the challenges it presents. Motivation is like a party animal friend, great for a night out, but not someone you would rely on to pick you up from the airport. You must understand its role and its limitations. Then you'll learn how to navigate around them to get what we really want. No dangling of carrots or self-imposed guilt trips necessary. And he goes on to talk about motivation and how complex it is. Okay, so I read this book when I was a child, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I came from a pretty rough, not a background. Let's just say there was a lot to handle and a lot to deal with. And I used the ideas that are in this book long before this book was ever written. I always used tiny habits that change everything. See, one of the habits that I used when I was younger, you might laugh at this, but and the interesting thing is you can have a habit, start out with a habit, and it's a good habit for you. And then as you get older and grow up and all, you might feel, well, that's not a good habit anymore. Maybe it's outworn its welcome. So I had this habit, tiny habit of watching all of the detective shows and watching all of the, the Matlocks and the Columbos and all of the detective shows and all the crime shows, the courtroom shows. That was my habit, my behavior. I liked to watch TV when I had the opportunity to watch it. Now, the reason that I had this tiny habit and the reason it changed everything for me was I was living in a situation where I was in danger. And I learned so much from Perry Mason and from Matlock and from all of, the detective TV shows, the murder mysteries and all. As a little child, I learned what little things could change things forever for me. And one of the things that I learned was somebody was in the habit of always chasing me around, and when they finally caught me, there was hell to pay, as they say. But what I learned from the detective shows was this. You always looked at the guys that were murdered on the detective shows. So I learned one or two things from that. And the first thing I learned was, get your body against the wall. Yeah, if you're in danger and you're outside, and disclaimer, don't do anything I do. This is for my own life and my own benefit. So what I would do is run. If I knew the person was coming after me, I'd run, and I would get my body against the wall. Why would I get up against the wall? Well, first off, I wasn't able to get out of the building. So I only give that advice if you cannot get out of the building, get up against the wall. If you can't hide anywhere where they can't see you, get up against the wall. So you get up against the wall, and what I learned from the detective show was this. Once I was up against the wall, I could not be hit on the back of the head. Yes. You can get a lot of hits to the front of the head and the side of the head. You can get hits to the face and hits to the arms and legs. You sucker, you get hit in the back of the head and you might see stars and you might never wake up from that. So, up against the wall. It has nothing to do with cops. It has to do with protecting your life. If you're running away and you're in the house and you need to protect yourself, you get up against the wall that protects the whole back of your head, and then you could do like the karate stance to protect the front. You could put your guard up like that. And this is one of the tiny habits that I used as a child to protect myself. Up against the wall, put my arms up. Because I really wasn't an aggressive person, so I wasn't interested in fighting back. I was just interested in defending myself, keeping myself from being harmed. So anyway, that was one of my tiny habits. And all through my life, I had these tiny habits, these little things that helped me. Tiny habits that changed everything. So, And I learned a lot from those detective shows. You know, they always got hit on the back of the head with a gun or something, with something heavy. As soon as they got hit on the back of the head, guess what? They were dead. Back of your head is very, very sensitive. Your brain's in there. So anyway, back to tiny habits. What other tiny habits did I have? I developed another tiny habit when I was growing up as a teenager, as a kid. And that tiny habit was to use other people's words. Now, what I used was quotations and positive scriptures, a line from the Bible or something like that. And what that did for me was that changed everything in my life. I could be like the most down ever, like I would figure there's nowhere lower to go. And I would bring to mind a quote from the scripture. One of the quotes that I absolutely love, there's two of them. One of them helped me when I was like 9 or 10 years old. Or a teenager, older than that. About 9 or 10. And that quotation was, ... Lo, I am with you, even unto the end of the world. I read that. So here's the thing. If you are suffering from depression or something like that, and you just can't make it through the day, you need to wake yourself up with something wonderful, something positive, something that's going to pull you through the day so you can start over the next day, no matter what's happening to you. So I got that little quote from somebody had sent me an Easter card, and I taped that quote to something that I would see every day, like I didn't even have to like look it up in a book or something like that. So I'd go over, it'd be taped there, and I'd read it, and like, "Lo, I am with you even unto the end of the world." And I'd smile, and I'd be like, "Yep, I can do this another day." And what it is God telling us that you're not alone. You will be amazed what you can go through if you know that you're not alone. See, the thing is, if you are not alone, you have hope. And if you have hope, you can survive. And that's the difference between people that don't survive and people that do. They have tiny habits that change everything. That's not in the book about the scriptures, but that's a tiny habit that I used to change my life. So, another tiny habit. I had two phrases, actually. I had that one. And then I had, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. Who strengthens me? I'm not really good at remembering quotes, but you got the gist of it. I think you know where that is. It's in the Bible. I can do all things through Christ. Now, the reason you need the through Christ is because you can do a lot of bad stuff, and you can't do that. You'll be stopped eventually, either after you do it or before you do it. But if you say it like that, I can do all things through Jesus Christ, only good can happen, because it says in the Bible somewhere that God turns everything, he turns everything evil and everything bad around for good. So that means, like, if somebody wishes you bad and evil and somebody does something horrible to you, God in your life, if you remember that and you remember what Jesus said to us, he will turn all things around for good. And I have had that proven to me hundreds and hundreds of times in my life. There have been horrible things that have happened to me, but God, in his wisdom and in his time, turned everything around for good. And I'm living proof. Yeah, I witnessed it. So, you can change tiny habits that can change everything. And what's the difference between someone who has a tiny habit like me, whether it's motivation or positive thinking, and somebody who doesn't? Somebody who doesn't know how to pull himself out of the pit, doesn't have a scripture, doesn't have anything to hold on to, is somewhere and he like really thinks he's alone. He's somewhere and he thinks like it happened and like nobody knows. And what happens when he's got nobody and he really feels alone? The Christian is never alone because Christ is always with the Christian. What happens is he wakes up one morning in January and he does something that he's been thinking about for weeks and weeks and months. And he commits the crime of suicide because he has no hope. He doesn't commit the crime of suicide because he wants to die. No. Because he has no hope. Because he doesn't know that he's not alone. Because when he felt alone, he thought he was alone. And he had no hope. So the one without hope commits suicide. And I guess that brings us back to world affairs, where if you're thinking about deciding a religion, whether it be Christian or Muslim or Jewish or anything, you're thinking about deciding about a God, or which God should I believe in? If your kids or teenagers or moms or anybody like that, I hope that you choose the religion that does not demand that you send your kids out as suicide bombers, because it is a mother's duty. And it's just the instinct of a real mom, a good mom, to not wish harm on their own child, on their babies, on their teenagers. So if you're in the middle and you're up in the air and you can't decide about which religion to go to or which place to go to, please, mothers and dads and kids and teenagers or wherever who you're deciding, do not choose the religion that orders you to send your child, your babies, your teenagers, in somewhere with a suicide vest. Because God, real God, Jesus Christ, doesn't approve of that. Jesus Christ came to us as a child. And you got to know the children are his favorite. So this new year, when you're deciding new things and taking new chances, I have 1 minute and 55 seconds to go. Thank you. And when you're making those decisions, here's the thing. Choose Jesus and choose the Holy Bible. You can always change your mind later if you dare. But choose the way. Choose the religion. Choose the Savior that loves little babies and loves little children. Choose the way of love, because Jesus says, love your enemies. He doesn't say you have to be with them, but love them. Love them from a distance. Anyway, I think I'm going to I'm going to tell you right now, we're produced through the facilities of Staten Island Community Television. Now, I like speaking at a podium. I feel more confident. What do you think? You've seen me sit at the table. What do you think? Shall I go back to sitting down in the chair? Or shall I just express myself and go turn that television off? Tune in on Saturdays at 12:30. Channel 34.